Okay, so in the webinar today, we're going to look at some things that you may or may not know that you can do with some of your computing devices. And I've tried to pick an array of things. Some have to do with certain programs, some have to do with Windows 10, some have to do with Mac. And originally I said I would do 5, and I may wind up doing 1 or 2 more than that, but we'll start and see how we make out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you, and I want to start by something that's kind of simple, and you may actually know this one because it goes way back. But just in case you don't know it, this is a really good, helpful little thing. One of the things that can happen, and this is a Windows item, one of the things that can happen in Windows is that sometimes you'll get windows that sit on top of each other and you can't find the window that you're looking for. So the good news is on the keyboard, you can use the Alt key, that's A-L-T, and hold that down, and then you can press the Tab key. And what happens is all of the windows that are open appear on the screen. And if you keep clicking the Tab key, you notice that the windows, you see that little white outline. That means that window is in focus. And if I let go of it, that is the window that will then come to the top. So again, this is not a really brand new thing. It's been around a long time in Windows, but I noticed that a lot of people aren't familiar with it. So you hold down the Alt key and then click on the tab, and one click will bring up everything that's open. And you notice that that one window, that Explorer window, when I went to that, I closed it so it no longer shows that it's open. So that's what you can do to tab through the windows that are open. So if you have a window that's hidden, that's a good time to see it, or an easy way to see it is use the Alt tab. So again, it's kind of an old one, but you may not have known about it. And if you did, great, it's a good reminder to use it. And if you didn't know you could do that, then you just learned something new. All right, one of the things I want to do is in Windows 10, this is a really kind of important one. And a lot of people may not know that you can do this. So sometimes people will say, well, what's taking up all the space on my computer? They'll find out that their hard drive is running out of space. So Windows 10 has a really good feature. And what you can do is go down to the search in the lower left-hand corner and search the word storage. And when you do that, what happens is storage, I got to spell it right, storage comes up at the top. So I'm going to click on that. And what you see on the screen is you see that I have 2 drives, the C drive and D drive, which is a recovery drive. The C drive, of course, is the big one. And that shows me how much I'm using and how much space I have left free. However, just looking at that doesn't tell me what's using up all the space. So what I can then do is pick the C drive and click on that. And what the Windows 10 will do is it will now go through and it will find out how much space each of these things are taking up. So it takes a few minutes. You can see the circles going around. At least I think you can, yes. You can see the circles going around, and we'll wait for it. And when it's finished, it will show me exactly how much space each of these things are using. Now, but if you're a Mac user, I'm sorry to say that this is not built into Mac, like it is with Windows 10. However, there are some third-party apps in the Apple Store that will, in essence, if you install them, they can do the same thing. All right, and if there's any Mac users that need to know what they are, just shoot me an email, and I'll get back to you with a couple of them. They're not all free, but they're not expensive either. Okay, so now on the Windows, it has finished telling me, looking and finding what is taking up all the space. And this is often important for people because you know that if you get down to less than 10% of free space, your machine will slow down. And as an example, when you look at mine, I'm using 692 and have 215 free. So it's about 900. If I was to get down around 100 to maybe 95 gigabytes of free space, my computer would slow down. So I want to see what can I do. So when I look down here, I can see that apps and games are taking up 111 gigabytes. I don't really play a lot of games, so you know, that's a lot, but I could probably take some games off if I wanted. The desktop is taking up 93.9. And that's because I sometimes store files on there that really eventually go on an external drive. But while they're sitting on the desktop, they're taking up space. Now, music, you see that, but here's one called temporary files. And that's taking up 59.2 gigabytes of space. So I could get a pretty good hunk of space back if I was to take care of those temporary files. Now, here's how you do it. Now I click on temporary files, and it's going to scan, and it's going to make a list, and it's going to tell me everything that's a temporary file, how much space it's taking up, and it will let me decide what I want to do. And you can see it's still working. You can see the little green line going across, and the list is getting longer. So, and it will put check marks in what it suggests that you get rid of. Now, you can get rid of all of them, but it gives you the suggestion. For instance, it says, look, you have 7 megabytes of thumbnails. You could get rid of those. You have 41 megabytes of temporary files. You could get rid of those. But here is the real biggie. The first one, 493 megabytes. That's a half a gig with some log files. And then associated with that is the fourth one down, Windows Update Cleanup, 5.21 gigabytes of space. And you can see that it already has a check mark in it and is suggesting to me that I get rid of it. So what I can do is I can click on Remove Files. If I don't want to change anything else, I'm just going to take Microsoft's recommendations and leave those check marks in, and I'm going to click Remove Files. And what it will do is it will purge those files out, and I will get that space back so that I have more space on the hard drive. But if I was going back to the original where it showed, let me let that finish. And then if I went back and went back one, and it's going to reload again. So for instance, if I saw that pictures were taking up a ton of space, which my pictures are taking up, you know, fairly a good amount of space, I might go and say, well, let me move those pictures to some kind of external drive that I can keep safe somewhere. Because as it is right now, there's 53 gigabytes of pictures. But as long as I have enough space, I'm not going to worry about it. But that's what happens. So that's kind of a cool feature in Windows 10 that most people have no idea it's there. You can see what's taking up how much space, because some people will log in and they'll say, oh, I have a lot of pictures. Is that slowing my computer down? Well, having pictures and documents on your computer will not slow the computer down unless you get to less than 10% of free space. So that's a kind of a cool a thing that you might not have known you can do. And again, in Mac, they have third-party apps to do the same thing, but it helps you see exactly what's going on and what's using the space. Okay, the next thing I want to look at, I know all of you don't have Microsoft Word, but I did want to see, one of the things that people say is they complain that when they have a Word document, it doesn't go to save where they want it. Like for instance, my Word documents, I generally save in OneDrive, which is online, so I can get it from other computers. And I generally save that in the same folder, Documents for KCC. Okay, but by default, that is not where Word goes. If you just open Microsoft Word, it normally would save just to documents. But I don't want it there. I want it on OneDrive. So in order to change that, here's what I do. I go to File, and I can go down here to Options, which is all the way down on the left. Hopefully you can see the cursor there. And then in the box that comes up, on the left, I click Save. Now there's a bunch of things in there that may not be important, like Microsoft Word saves temporary files. You don't really care where those are saved. But the main one is default file, local file location. And if I hit Browse, I can now make the default wherever I want it. And normally, as I said, out of the box, that would be under your name and Documents. But in this case, I've changed it. If you look in the address bar, you'll see that it's John, OneDrive - Keystone Computer Concepts Inc. -Documents -KCC. So if I were to create a document and just automatically save it, that is the folder it would be in. Now again, I want it in OneDrive so that I can get that document on all of my other machines. And that's why I'm storing them there. If I had something that I say, look, I don't need to share this on other machines, I would go over here when I'm saving, not in here. I would leave the default the same. But when I go to save the document, I would put Save As, and I would pick wherever I wanted it to go. Documents, downloads, I can browse, I can put it wherever I want on my computer. So here would be the normal documents, I can put it in there. But if you want to change the default where it normally goes, then that's where you go to File, Options, Save, and where it says Default Local File Location. And that's where you browse and put it wherever you want it. So if you use Microsoft Word, that's a cool feature so that your normal saving goes to exactly where you want it. Now, speaking of OneDrive, many of you know that OneDrive is Microsoft's cloud storage. You know, we have OneDrive, and of course with Apple, we have iCloud. But here's something that you may not have known about OneDrive. I'm going to bring OneDrive up right now. And one of the things that you can do with OneDrive, you can see in the left there, I just clicked, these are all my OneDrive folders. You can share a file or folder with whoever you want. They don't have to be part of your team, quote unquote. You can share it with any place that you want. So I'm going to give you an example. I have a folder called Fonts. And what happens is I'm going to right click on Fonts, and there will be a place where I can share it. Hang on just a second. I think I already shared that one, so that won't work. Fonts from Old Computer. If I right click on that, here is in the menu that comes up, there is the OneDrive icon and it says Share. So if I wanted to share that folder, I left click on that, and now I have some options here. I can say whoever I share this with, they can edit what's in that folder, or they can edit the file if I'm just sharing a file. However, maybe I don't want them to do that. Maybe I only want them to be able to view it and not change it. So in that case, I'm going to click on this, and I can uncheck allow editing. And I can even put an expiration date, meaning that maybe I'm only going to share it with them for a week. After that, they can't have access anymore. So I'm going to say apply and anyone. And then what happens is I'm going to put an email address in here. And I put Joyce's and it came up with Joyce. And if I click on that, it just shared this folder with her. And I can copy the link. I can send her a link. I can do it in email. There's different ways I can do it where it says more apps. It's going to create the shareable link. And now I could share it in Facebook. I can use mail. I can use OneNote. If she was close enough to me, I could actually share it as a nearby device. There's all kinds of ways I can share it. Now, what that means is she can't get into the rest of my OneDrive, but she can get into that folder, or if it was a single file, she could get to that file. And again, depending on how I set it up, she might be able to change it, or maybe she can only read it. We do this from time to time because people can upload. If I share that folder, she could upload. So as an example, we had something going on at church where someone needed to upload a bunch of pictures to me. They were too big to email. So I said, look, I'm going to create a folder with your name. I'm going to share it with you. And you upload the photos right to OneDrive to that folder. And then I can work on them on my computer. So it's a very handy way of being able to share files and folders, especially for sort of temporary little projects. It's a great way. So just know that you can share files and folders in OneDrive. Okay, now I want to take a look at something that we're going to actually have the webinar next week on Skype. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Skype because I want to share one thing that you may not know you can do in Skype. Most of the time we think of Skype as simply a way to make video calls or a way to make audio calls, and that's all true. And if you do Skype to Skype, so for instance, I have Skype, if you have Skype, you can call me either video call or audio call, and it's no charge. You could be anywhere in the world. You know, you could be in Alaska, you could be wherever, Australia. And as long as you can get on the internet, you could contact me through Skype, and it doesn't cost either of us anything. So most people know that about Skype. All right. You can also, if you have some Skype credit, you can also call regular landlines and mobile phones, and you can text to a mobile phone. You have to have a little money to do that, but luckily it's not expensive. So the thing I wanted to show now, though, instead of I'm not doing to next week's webinar, we'll go over a bunch next week. But what I did want to show was that down at the bottom, now I brought Joyce up here where I could type her a message. I could start a video call, an audio call, but this is what I wanted to show you. Down at the bottom, you'll see a place, I'm on it right now, and you should be able to see it says send image. And beside that, it says send file. So, you know, sometimes what we do is we'll attach a file to an email and send it off to someone. And we're not 100% sure that they're going to get it, okay? Because sometimes emails don't go through. But I can click, and I can click send an image, and then what it will do is it will bring up my, in this case, my picture library, and if what I wanted to send wasn't in there, I could pick somewhere else. So I'm going to pick an image and say open. And so what happens is it's sending that picture to her. And if I wanted to type a message, I could also do that. Now, also right where it says type a message, you see it says via Skype. Also noticed that I could send her a text message. And again, we're going to go into Skype next week, full blast, 30 minutes, nothing but Skype. But I did want to show you that you can send a picture or a document through Skype to someone. I mean, maybe you don't even have the person's email address, but if they're on your Skype, you can still send them a picture or a document. So that's something that's really kind of cool. Okay, so I want to show one thing. Most of you know I have an iPhone, not Android, but I did want to show you something that's on the phone, on the iPhone, that on the newer ones that you can do. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my phone with the screen. And you should be able to see it on the screen right now. And this is kind of a goofy little thing, but you may not have known you could do it if you have an iPhone. And Android users, you know, don't be feeling left out. I will have a couple Android tips for you and follow up. I just don't have an Android phone, so I can't show them. But one of the things that you can do, or that I often do, is when I do a screenshot. Now, what's a screenshot? A screenshot is where you take a picture of whatever is on your screen at the time. And I'm going to show you what you can do with the iPhone, which is different and kind of cool. So just give me a second here to get something up that I want to do. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but yesterday was Apple's big day. They announced all their new iPhones and all that good stuff. So, okay. So here's an example, and you'll see it on your screen in a minute. Okay, here's something that I have on my screen, and this is, I'm in Instagram. And what I have to do is do a screen capture. So on the iPhone, if you don't know how to do that, it's different on the different models. So I'm going to capture a screen capture, which you see went down to the bottom left. I'm going to click on that so it's back up where I can work on it. If you look at the bottom, you see some pens and highlighters, etc. And what you can do is you can change colors, and now I could write on this. I can draw on it. I can do whatever I want on it. Of course, I'm not doing anything that makes sense right now, but I'm doing that. I could put text on it. Okay, I could type in text. And I can even put my signature on if I want. And there's a bad signature. I did it with left-handed, which is not good. But I put that on there. Now I can say done and save that to my photos. Now, are you going to want to draw randomly on stuff like I just did? No. I've just wanted to show you how it works. You can highlight things. You can save that. So if you have an iPhone, it's kind of a neat thing. And if I go into photos now, just to prove that it's there, there is the photo with all the garbage written on it and all the stuff that I did. So it's a kind of neat way to take a screenshot, and you can put your own notes on the screenshot. You can do whatever you want. And of course, it's not just with Instagram, it's anything that appears on your iPhone screen. So that's how that works. All right, so there's a little thing for the iPhone people. And let me turn the iPhone off. All right. Okay, so that's gone. So let's see. Wow, it's 2:30 already. Let me see what else is that I had. I had a bunch of things, but let's see. Okay, I will tell you this. This is, I don't know how many of you use WordPad. But Joyce and I use WordPad a lot to keep things that we're going to use over and over, sentences, paragraphs, etc. So for instance, here's a WordPad of mine that we use for when people renew remote technical support. These are actually 3 different responses depending how they paid, etc. And we use WordPad, and then we would just highlight, let's say, this one and copy it and then paste it wherever it needs to go. Because these things rarely change. So instead of having to type it every time, we just keep it in WordPad or in Notepad. So that's a kind of cool thing. But here's a little trick I want to show you about Notepad. If you go to the very first line, so I'm going to hit a space and go back up to the first line. If you put a period and a capital LOG and then save it. Now I'm going to close that and I'm going to open it again. Same Notepad document. What the log at the top did was it put down at the bottom the date and time that I opened it. Now, why that might be a good thing is if you want to know when did I make changes to this Notepad document. And you'll be able to see when you opened it and when things were changed. So that's kind of a cool little thing in Notepad. You might not be using Notepad, but again, if you have something that you repeatedly do, it's a very cool thing to do. I guess that's about all we're going to be able to do today. I had a few more things, but we're already kind of over time. So we will call it a day for that part. Joyce, were there any questions that I needed to answer before we close? Okay, so there were no questions that I need to answer. She may have answered some, but nothing I have to answer. So thank you for coming to today's webinar. I hope you learned something from it. And there's all kinds of little tricks on all the different things. And I just didn't want to bombard you with a lot. You can see it took us a good half hour to get through 5 or 6. So anyway, thanks a lot and have a great day.